Let me tell you about a woman who died twice. The first death was at 32,000 feet over the Yellow Sea, when the private jet she was aboard stopped being a plane and became a falling thing. A silver needle dropping through cloud cover, spinning once, twice, then surrendering to the black water below. The second death happened before that. It happened quietly, over 3 years in spreadsheets and offshore accounts and whispered phone calls made while she slept. It happened in the hands of a man she had chosen, in the silence of a sister she had raised. The first death, she survived. The second, well, that is the kind of death that changes the shape of a person permanently. My name is not important. What matters is that I was there for the pieces of this story that Maria Ann does not speak about publicly. I know what she said to Kelvin G. sang in the dark of a syndicate safe house on the coast of Incheon, when she first understood the full scope of what had been done to her. I know what her face looked like before she arranged it back into composure. I know what it costs a woman to build a billion-dollar empire and then watch someone she loved try to bury her in the same water that was supposed to make her richer. This is not a love story. This is a story about power, about betrayal, about what a woman does when she comes back from the dead and decides that mercy is a luxury she can no longer afford. Pay attention. I will not repeat myself. The morning of September the 9th, Maria Ann woke before her alarm. This was not unusual. Maria had not slept through an alarm since she was 24 years old, the year her father died and left her his single undrilled oil field in River State, a company with 43 employees and a handwritten note that said only NNE. The name will mean something. I believe this. She had put the note in a frame and hung it in the first real office she ever rented, in Port Harcourt, and she had not needed an alarm since because she no longer slept the way other people slept. She rested, she recharged. But she was always, somewhere underneath, awake. The bedroom was large and cream-colored, high-ceilinged, the kind of room that cost money not in its furniture but in its silence. The house in Banana Island sat on the edge of the Lagos Lagoon, and on clear mornings, which this was, the water outside the floor-to-ceiling windows caught the early light and threw it back at the ceiling in pale, shifting patterns. Maria lay on her back watching those patterns, and doing what she did every morning before she rose, she reviewed her world. She was 38 years old. She had taken a single inheritance and turned it into Okonkwo Energy Group, OEG, one of the 4 largest privately held energy companies on the African continent. She had offices in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, and London. She had 312 employees. She had survived 2 hostile takeover attempts, 1 government investigation that was later dropped, and a market collapse in 2019 that had taken down 11 companies larger than hers. She had survived, each time, by being more prepared than the thing trying to kill her. She reviewed her world and found it, as always, satisfactory. What she did not review, what she had trained herself not to review in those early pre-alarm minutes, because she had learned early that a CEO who overthinks her personal life before 7 a.m. makes worse decisions, was the silence in the bed beside her. Alex was not there. He was rarely there in the mornings now. She had noted this, the way she noted most things, clinically, filed, assigned to a category labeled marriage logistics that she would address when she had bandwidth. Alex kept late hours. He had always kept late hours. In the early years, those late hours had been about the company, the 2 of them in the Port Harcourt office at midnight, arguing about drilling rights and laughing too loudly, and eating jollof rice from takeaway containers on the floor because neither of them had time to sit at a table. The late hours had been the texture of their partnership, the thing that made them feel, both of them, that they were building something together. Somewhere in the last several years, the late hours had continued and the laughing had stopped. She had noted this too, filed it, not yet addressed. She rose at 6:22, she prayed at 6:30, on her knees on the rug beside the window, the water outside still throwing light across the room. She asked, as she always asked, for wisdom, for the discernment to know what was true, for protection over her household and her work. She did not yet know how specific that prayer needed to be. By 7:15 she was at the dining table in a silk wrapper, eating ogi and akara that her housekeeper had prepared, reviewing the itinerary for the Seoul trip on her tablet. The merger with Hansung Infrastructure was the largest deal of her career, a joint energy development partnership that would open OEG to the East Asian market and give Hansung access to OEG's West African drilling licenses. The deal was worth, at signing, $2.3 billion US. She had been negotiating it for 14 months. She was flying out at noon. "You look like you're reading a court verdict," said a voice from the doorway. Lisa Bells. Her younger sister appeared in the kitchen doorway in a silk robe, hair wrapped, holding a phone and looking the way she always looked at 7:15, soft and unhurried and faintly amused at the world. At 31, Lisa Bells was beautiful in the particular way that younger siblings of driven people sometimes were, unburdened by the weight of being first, lighter in posture, quicker to smile. She had their mother's high cheekbones and their father's eyes. Maria had raised her. After their parents died, first their father, then their mother 2 years later, Maria had been 24 and Lisa had been 17, and there had been no one else. Maria had been simultaneously building a company and raising a teenager, and she had done both imperfectly and with a fierce specific love that she rarely named aloud, but that Lisa had always, she believed, understood. "I'm reviewing the Seoul itinerary," Maria said, not looking up. "You've reviewed it 40 times. 41, Maria said. "Come and eat." Lisa sat across from her and reached for an akara without ceremony. She was technically OEG's Director of Strategic Communications, a title Maria had given her 3 years ago, when it became clear that Lisa had a genuine talent for narrative, for knowing how a story should be told and to whom. In practice, Lisa was also confidant, occasional antagonist, and the only person on earth who could make Maria laugh in the middle of a board meeting with a single look. Or so Maria believed. "Is Alex going with you?" Lisa asked. "He was supposed to," Maria said. "He said yesterday he couldn't make it. Project issue in Abuja." Said Lisa, looking at her phone. Maria looked up. "What does mean?" "It means I heard you," Lisa said. She looked up and smiled. "Go close your deal, Maria. You've worked too hard for it." Maria held her sister's gaze for a moment. That habit of assessment she couldn't turn off. Then she nodded. "I planned to." She could not have known, in that moment, what the word M&M was carrying. She could not have known that it was the sound of a woman performing ordinary concern while holding an extraordinary secret. She could not have known that her sister, the person she had fed and educated and fought for and loved across 20 years, had been participating in her destruction for 36 months. She ate her ogi, she reviewed her itinerary, she planned to close her deal. Let me tell you about Alex King, because it would be too easy to call him a villain and move on. He was 44 years old and handsome in the way that some men are handsome, not through any single feature, but through an arrangement, a charm, a quality of attention that made you feel, when he looked at you, that you were the most important thing in the room. He had this quality when he was 22 and working at a Port Harcourt law firm, and met Maria at a Nigeria Bar Association dinner, and he had it still. It had not diminished. If anything, it had refined. He had loved her once. This is important to say because the worst betrayals are not committed by people who never loved. They are committed by people who loved and then became, over time, a different version of themselves, a version that loved something else more. In Alex's case, what he came to love more was not another woman. It was not recklessness, or addiction, or the ordinary midlife fractures that hollow men out quietly. What Alex King came to love more was the idea of himself as the origin of something, rather than the partner. This is a disease with no medical name. It does not appear in diagnostic manuals. But it is real, and it is common, and it is most virulent in men who married women who turned out to be exceptional. Somewhere in year 6 of their marriage, when OEG had its first billion naira quarter and the headline in Business Day read, "Okonkwo Energy posts record growth," and the photograph used was Maria alone at the podium, Alex King began to rewrite the internal history of the company. In his version, he had conceived the strategy, he had built the relationships, he had done the work, in the background, unrecognized, while the story was told around the name that wasn't his. He told himself this story carefully, over years, until it was the only version he had. He was not in Lagos that morning. He was in Abuja, yes, but not for the project reason he had given Maria. He was in a serviced apartment on Aminu Kano Crescent, sitting at a glass table with a laptop open and a glass of bourbon beside it that he hadn't touched, waiting. His phone rang at 7:23 a.m. He picked up without greeting. "She's still on schedule?" said the voice on the other end, male, low. "Noon departure," Alex said. A pause. "And the other matter?" "It's handled," Alex said. "On the Seoul side. You're certain?" "I'm certain," Alex said. He looked at the bourbon. "She won't make it to the meeting." He hung up. He sat for a long time looking at nothing. Then he picked up the bourbon and drank. "I want to be clear about something. Alex King is not a man who woke up one morning and decided to kill his wife. That is not who he was. He is a man who made one decision and then a second decision to protect the first, and a third to protect the second, until the decisions had their own momentum and he was no longer choosing. He was simply moving in the direction he had already committed to. The way a man in a current stops swimming and lets the water take him. The decision at the beginning had been the money. 3 years ago, certain that Maria was on the verge of selling a 40% stake in OEG to a European investor, a sale that would have diluted his own shares significantly. He had begun moving company assets into a Cayman Islands vehicle he controlled. Slowly at first, carefully, then less carefully. Then urgently, when the Seoul deal began to take shape and he understood that Maria was not going to sell. She was going to expand, and she was going to do it in her name, for her company, and he was going to stand behind her in the photographs for the rest of his life. He had moved, in total, $240 million US. Lisa had helped him hide it. He had not asked her to. He had not, in fact, asked Lisa for anything. What had happened 18 months ago was that Lisa had found the discrepancy by accident, a misrouted accounting document that crossed her desk in her communications role and made no sense until she sat with it long enough, and it made terrible sense. She had gone to Alex. He had expected anger, or a threat, or an ultimatum. Instead, she had said, "How much is left?" He had stared at her across the office. "Or Maria," Lisa had clarified. "If this deal closes, how much does she walk away with?" "Everything she hasn't touched," he said. "The operational assets, the licenses, the Seoul deal itself." Lisa had sat with this for a long moment. Then she said, "She has never once asked me what I want, not once in 20 years. I love my sister, but I'm not dying for her legacy." He had not needed to ask her again after that. The OEG Gulfstream G700 departed Murtala Muhammad Airport at 12:14 p.m., 14 minutes behind schedule. Maria was the only passenger. She had flown to Seoul twice before with a delegation, lawyers, advisors, a communications team. This time she had wanted to fly alone, a choice she had made for reasons that were partly strategic. She liked to negotiate in a clear head, without the noise of other people's anxiety. And partly something she could not name, a desire for solitude, for a particular kind of stillness, before the biggest moment of her professional life. She had changed out of the silk wrapper into a sand-colored suit. She wore her hair in a low, precise bun. She carried a black attaché case containing the final draft of the merger documents, which she had read so many times she could recite the key clauses in her sleep. She called Alex from the tarmac. He answered on the third ring. "I'm about to board," she said. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," he said. "You've never needed luck." It was a kind thing to say. He was, in this regard, as in so many others, precise in his performances. She boarded. The crew, a pilot, CO pilot, and a single flight attendant named Amara, who had worked for her for 4 years, completed their checks. They climbed out over Lagos and turned northeast, over the Gulf of Guinea, over the Sahara, banking eventually east across the Arabian Peninsula, setting course for Seoul. The first 9 hours were unremarkable. She worked, she ate sparingly. She slept for 2 hours in the flatbed configuration dreamlessly. She woke over central China and ordered green tea from Amara and went back to the merger documents and thought, as she always thought in the last hours before a closing, about her father's handwriting in that framed note. The name will mean something. It was at hour 11, over the Yellow Sea, that the plane began to behave strangely, not dramatically, not in the way that films depict mechanical failures, sudden drops, screaming, oxygen masks. It was quieter than that, a sound that did not belong, a vibration in the fuselage that had a different quality than turbulence, a warning tone from the cockpit that the pilot, Captain Taiwo, who had flown for OEG for 6 years, acknowledged with professional calm, and then, 30 seconds later, acknowledged again, less calmly. Maria knew before anyone told her that something was wrong. She had spent 14 years flying in private aircraft. She knew the difference between the sounds a plane makes when it is working and the sounds it makes when it is deciding. She unbuckled her seatbelt and walked forward. Amara was standing outside the cockpit door, her face controlled in the specific way that flight crew are trained to control their faces in emergencies, which is to say the control itself was the warning. "Ms. Anne," Amara said, "Captain Taiwo is asking you to return to your seat and put on your both engines," Maria said. Amara looked at her. A pause. "There is a fuel system failure, both engines. The captain is attempting to—" The plane dropped. Not a gentle loss of altitude, a drop. The kind that lifts you out of your seat, that suspends everything momentarily in weightlessness, the kind that makes you understand, viscerally and without argument, that you are not in a machine anymore. You are in a projectile. You are subject to physics. You are, in the precise meaning of the word, falling. Maria grabbed the wall of the galley. The angle of the cabin tilted. Through the window on her left she could see the yellow sea below, gray-green and enormous, and at this angle, rising. She thought, clearly and without panic, in the 7 seconds before impact, "I should have addressed the silence in the bed." Then the water came up to meet her. She came up because she was told once by a swimming instructor at her secondary school in Port Harcourt that if you are submerged unexpectedly and disoriented, you find the direction of your own air bubbles and follow them. They always know which way is up. She had held this instruction somewhere in her body for 26 years without needing it. She needed it now. She followed her own bubbles. She broke the surface, gasping, in darkness. The impact had been at approximately 11:40 p.m. local time, and the yellow sea closed and opened around her in long black swells. She could not see the aircraft. She could not see Amara. She could not see Captain Taiwo or his CO pilot. The sea was cold in the particular way of autumn in the northern Yellow Sea, which is to say cold enough to matter. Cold enough to become a problem in minutes. Cold enough to be a kind of violence. She was bleeding from a cut above her left eyebrow. She had lost one shoe. Her left shoulder ached in the complex way that suggested something had been wrenched but not broken. Her attaché case was gone. She stayed afloat. She was a strong swimmer, another inheritance from Port Harcourt, from childhood summers in the Bonny River, and she turned herself in slow, deliberate circles in the dark water, looking for debris, for light, for anything to hold to. She found a section of fuselage paneling floating approximately 8 meters from where she had surfaced. She swam to it and draped herself over it and breathed. The sea lifted and dropped her. In the distance, too distant to help but present, she could see the lights of what might have been a ship. She began to kick toward the lights. She kicked until her legs were no longer kicking by choice but by the kind of residual instruction that the body gives itself when the mind has gone quiet. She kicked and the lights did not seem to come closer. Then they did. Then there were voices, Korean voices. She knew the cadence of Korean from months of soul negotiations, from conference calls and preparatory language study, from the careful cultural homework she did before every major deal, because she believed that respect was a form of preparation. She knew it was Korean before she could understand a word. She called out. She called out again. A light found her. Hands found her. She was pulled from the water by 2 men on a rope ladder hanging from the side of a vessel. Not a Coast Guard vessel, she registered, not a cargo ship, but something smaller and faster, with no identifying lights that she could see. She was pulled over the railing. She hit the deck on her hands and knees. She coughed up seawater and stayed on her hands and knees for a moment, which was undignified, and which she would think about afterward. Not with shame, but with the precise memory of a woman who notes the exact coordinates of every moment she was brought to her knees. She raised her head. A man was standing above her, tall, perhaps 6 feet, lean, wearing a black jacket over a dark shirt, his hands at his sides. His face was angular, controlled, illuminated by the low glow of the ship's deck lights. He looked down at her with an expression that contained neither concern nor indifference, but something between, the careful attention of a man assessing the significance of what has just been placed in front of him. He said something in Korean that she did not understand. A second man stepped forward, shorter, younger, with the contained energy of someone trained to be useful. He said, in precise English, he asks, "Are you the only one?" Maria looked back at the black water, then at the man. She said, her voice steadier than it had any right to be, "I believe so, yes." The tall man looked at her for another moment. Then he said something to the younger man and walked away. "Come with me, please," the younger man said. His name was Kelvin G. Sang, and she did not know it yet. What she knew in the first hours was the safe house. The younger man, whose name was Park Ji-hoon, she learned when he introduced himself formally, slightly awkwardly, in the manner of a man who had been trained in courtesy under unusual circumstances, took her below deck and gave her dry clothing and clean water and a first aid kit, and then closed the door and left her alone. She treated her own cut. She was capable of this. She had field-dressed worse injuries on a drilling site in 2017 when a gauge blew and opened a gash in her forearm, and the nearest medical facility was 40 minutes away. She sat on the bunk in the oversized clothing and looked at her hands. They were not shaking. She noted this. She did not know if it was composure or shock, but she noted it. She had been in a plane crash. She had apparently survived. 3 other people on that plane had apparently not. She would grieve properly, she told herself. She would grieve Amara and Captain Taiwo and his co-pilot with the full weight they deserved. But she could not grieve in this moment, on this vessel, in this circumstance she did not yet understand. Grief was a luxury she had learned, long ago, to schedule. She stood, she tried the door. Unlocked, she walked out. The vessel was moving. She could feel the engine, could feel the change in the swell as they picked up speed. She walked down a narrow corridor toward a light source and found, in a small room that functioned as both galley and briefing space, the tall man. He was sitting at a bolted-down table with a satellite phone, and he ended his call when she walked in without any particular change of expression. The truth about Kelvin G. Sang was not available in any public record. If you searched his name, you found a registered shareholder in a legitimate Seoul-based shipping conglomerate, Jangsong Logistics, and a listed director of 3 real estate holding companies. You found nothing else. What the public record did not contain was the nature of the Jangsong Syndicate, the organization that had operated under the cover of legitimate business since Kelvin's father founded it in 1987. It was not a street-level operation that announced itself in violence. The Jangsong Syndicate was a financial organization. It moved money. It controlled debt. It held leverage over certain import and export licenses. It operated, Kelvin often said to Ji-hoon, exactly like a government, except more honestly, because it did not pretend to be serving the public good. Kelvin had taken control of the syndicate at 30 when his father had a stroke, and he had spent the 12 years since transforming it from the kind of operation that solved problems with physical force into the kind that solved them with information. He was not, by temperament, a violent man. He was a patient one, which was more dangerous. He had been in the Yellow Sea that night because one of his shipping vessels, the Haeun, ran a private cargo route that passed through those coordinates regularly, and Kelvin had been aboard for a meeting with the captain about a logistics dispute that required his personal presence. He had not been expecting to pull an African billionaire out of the water, but he had recognized the name the moment Ji-hoon reported it to him. He knew the Seoul deal. He had been watching it for months. They looked at each other. "I would like to know," Maria said, "where we are going." He said nothing. He was looking at her the way she had been looked at by certain men before big meetings, not with aggression, but with a quality of calculation that she had learned to read as a sign that she was being priced. "I am Maria Ann," she said, "CEO of Okonkwo Energy Group. My jet went down in the Yellow Sea approximately 2 hours ago. I am grateful to be alive and grateful to be on this vessel, and I would like to understand my situation." He looked at her for a moment longer. Then he said, in English that was accented but clear, "I know who you are." A pause. "My name is Kelvin G. Sang," he said. "Sit down. We have a long way to go." She sat, because the company that Maria was flying to meet, Hansung Infrastructure, owed the Jangsong Syndicate $180 million in a debt that had been outstanding for 3 years, secured against the Seoul deal. If the deal closed, the debt became liquid. If the deal did not close, Kelvin had a problem. When she sat across from him in the galley of the Haeun, alive and composed and bleeding slightly through a field-dressed bandage, Kelvin G. Sang was doing the arithmetic of his situation. He was also, and this he would not have admitted, registering the fact that a woman who had just survived a plane crash and spent 2 hours in the Yellow Sea was sitting across from him with the bearing of someone chairing a board meeting. He found this useful. He told her 3 things that night. The first, they were heading to Incheon, his private compound on the coast. He could have her at a hospital within the hour of docking if she wished, but he counseled against it. Why, she said. Because, he said, as of approximately 1 hour ago, your death has been reported. She went very still. What? She said, very quietly. The Korean Coast Guard received a report from Seoul Airspace Control of a downed aircraft. OEG's operations center in Lagos has been notified. I was on a call when the announcement came through. He looked at her steadily. As far as the world knows, Ms. Anne, you are dead. She processed this. She was not a woman who processed things slowly. But this particular information required a moment. She was dead. The world knew she was dead. Alex knew. How is this possible, she said. The crash was just hours ago. The notification moved very quickly, Kelvin said. Unusually quickly. The second thing he told her, your jet did not go down due to mechanical failure. She looked at him. The fuel system failure that brought it down was induced, he said. I have reason to believe this because the vessel you are sitting on is not a recreational ship, Ms. Anne, and I have sources that track certain kinds of activity in this region. A week ago, there was movement on a contract. A specific kind of contract. The target was a private aircraft, OEG registration, Seoul-bound. I did not know whose, I know now. She was looking at him the way she looked at documents when she was parsing them for the true meaning buried beneath the legal language. Someone hired someone to bring down my plane, she said. Yes. You know this for certain. I know this for certain. The third thing he told her, I have a reason to keep you alive that is not altruistic. You are worth something to me alive, Ms. Anne. The Hansung deal requires your signature. Without you alive and present, it does not close. She looked at him for a long time. I see, she said. I am telling you this, he said, because I do not have the patience for people who believe they are receiving charity when they are receiving a transaction. Something passed across her face, not a smile, not quite, a recognition. She said, fair enough. What do you need from me? I need 2 things, he said. I need time to find out who ordered the crash, and I need you to not be dead until I tell you that it is safe to not be dead. She looked at the table, at her hands, then at him. All right, she said. How long? 72 hours, he said. Possibly less. And in 72 hours, she said, I will know who did this. You will know, he said. What she did not ask him, not yet. What she was not prepared to ask, because asking it would mean sitting with its full weight, was who she suspected. She suspected no one. Or rather, she was not willing in that moment to look at what she already knew in the part of herself that had been noting things for years and filing them under later. She went to the bunk. She lay down in the oversized clothing in the dark. The sea moved beneath her. She did not cry. She made a list in her mind of what she knew. She made a second list of what she needed. She organized the lists. She filed them. Then, for the first time in as long as she could remember, she slept like someone who had no choice. The Jangsong compound at Incheon was not what she had expected from a crime syndicate's private estate, though she did not have, in fairness, a robust set of expectations for crime syndicate estates. It was restrained, a low modern structure set into the cliffside above the bay, almost entirely glass on the seaward side, with interiors that suggested a person who valued space and quiet and light. Korean ceramics on clean white shelves, a single large painting, abstract, dark greens and grays. Books in Korean, in English, in what appeared to be French, a kitchen that was functional and well-equipped, attended by a woman who appeared in the morning and departed in the evening, and asked no questions and volunteered no information. She was given her own room, the same quiet, the same quality of light. A change of clothes appeared, her size without explanation. She did not ask. Park Ji-hoon was her point of contact. He briefed her every morning at 8, concisely, on what he had found. He was meticulous. She came to appreciate this about him. He brought information in the way she liked information brought, ordered, sourced, stripped of interpretation, allowing her to draw her own conclusions. Kelvin was present in the compound but not adjacent. He kept a different rhythm. She heard him sometimes in the late evenings, moving through the lower level, a voice on a phone call. He joined her for dinner on the second evening, uninvited, unremarkably, as though they had an established habit. He brought 2 bowls of doenjang jjigae that the kitchen woman had left, and set one in front of her and sat down. They ate in silence for a while. "How long have you been in this business?" she asked. "Since I was born," he said. "My father ran it, his father before him." "Did you have a choice?" He considered this. "Did you?" he said. "Yes," she said immediately. "My father left me a company. He did not instruct me to run it." "Then what made you?" She looked at him. "He believed in it. That was enough." "My father believed in it too, in a different way. He believed that the people with money made the rules and the people without it suffered the rules, and he decided he would be in the first category rather than the second." A pause. "I inherited the organization. I changed its character. I did not change its fundamental purpose, which is survival," he said, "the same as yours." She looked at him across the table. He looked back at her. Neither of them was performing for the other. This was, she would think later, the most unusual thing about the 48 hours she spent in that compound. The absence of performance. She could not afford it. He had no use for it. And so, stripped of all of that, they ate their jjigae and talked about survival like 2 people who understood it in their cells. On the morning of the 3rd day, Park Ji-hoon called her into the briefing room, a small office on the compound's upper level with 2 screens on the wall and a single table, and laid out what he had. He had been working since the night of the crash. He was the kind of person who worked without announcing the effort, who produced results with the same expression he wore while eating, which was to say, composed, unremarkable, entirely reliable. He had 4 documents. He walked through them in sequence. The first, wire transfer records from 3 offshore accounts routed through a Cayman Island structure called King Nexus, Holding Limited. Over 36 months, $241 million had been transferred from OEG operational accounts into this vehicle. The transfers were sophisticated, small enough, spread across enough subsidiary transactions to avoid automatic flagging, but Park Ji-hoon had a talent for patterns in money, the way some people had a talent for music. He showed her the pattern. She looked at it. She read every line. "King," she said. The word was quiet. "Yes," Ji-hoon said. She looked at the document for a long time. Then, "Continue." The second document, communication records, an encrypted messaging platform showing exchanges between an account registered under a Seychelles company and an intermediary contact that the Yongsong Syndicate had been tracking for 18 months as a fixer for aviation sabotage. 3 key exchanges, a brief 2 words confirmed target. A response, OEGG 700, soul-bound, scheduled departure 09 September. A final, confirmed. 40% on completion. She read this twice. Her face did not change. "The originating account," she said. "Trace it." "It traces," Ji-hoon said, "through the Seychelles company, to a Lagos-registered individual. The individual is a director of King Nexus Holding Limited." She looked at the wall, at nothing, then back at the documents. "Alex," she said. Not a question. "Yes," Ji-hoon said. He paused, in the way of someone who has more to tell and is judging the right moment. "Ms. Ann, there is a 3rd document." He placed it in front of her. It was a company filing from the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria, an application filed 4 days ago, 1 day before the crash, to transfer the executive authority of Okonkwo Energy Group to its co-founder and co-director, Alex King, citing a spousal succession clause in the company's partnership agreement. Her face did not change. She read the clause. She had written the partnership agreement herself with their lawyers in 2012. The spousal succession clause had been intended as protection, a provision ensuring that, in the event of her death, the company would not be subject to a public contest for control, that it would pass smoothly to Alex, who was then her partner in every sense and whom she had trusted, in 2012, completely. She had written her own ending. She had written it 12 years ago for love, and it had been sitting there waiting. "The 4th document," she said. Her voice was even. Ji-hoon placed it gently. "This one," he said, "is the one I am sorry to show you." She looked at it. It was an email exchange, an internal OEG account, between Alex King and Lisa Bells. 18 months of correspondence, extracted from a server backup. She read the exchange. She read it from the beginning. From the moment, she could see the date of the first message. She could mark the exact week in her memory when she had gone to Accra for a conference and Lisa had stayed in Lagos. From the moment that Lisa had found the discrepancy and gone to Alex, she read every message. It took 11 minutes. She read without sound, without movement. The last message in the chain was dated September 5th, 4 days before the crash. It was from Lisa to Alex. It read, "Tell me she won't feel anything. Tell me it will be fast." Alex's response, "It will be fast." She sat for a very long time in the briefing room after Ji-hoon left. I will not describe to you what happened on her face in that room. I will not, because some things are not for narrating. There are moments that belong only to the person living them, and what Maria Ann held in that room, the weight of what her sister had said, the specific mercy of "tell me it will be fast," the nauseating tenderness of it, that is hers. It belongs to her. I witnessed it because I know the shape of her grief, and I will tell you only this. She was in that room for 40 minutes, and when she came out, her face was the face she used in boardrooms. It was a face that meant she had already decided what came next. Kelvin was in the main room, on a call. He ended it when he saw her. "I need to be in Seoul," she said. He looked at her. "The Hansung press conference," she said. "When is it scheduled?" "Tomorrow at 2 p.m., he said. "Hansung has already announced a new partnership structure, given the news of your—" He paused. "Given the news of your death." "New partner is who?" she said. "Alex King," Kelvin said. "He announced his assumption of the CEO role this morning. He has proposed to Hansung that the deal proceed under his stewardship." She almost smiled. There was something in her expression that was not warm but was deeply satisfied, in the way that terrible things are sometimes satisfying when they confirm what you already knew. "He is coming to Seoul," she said. "He lands this evening," Kelvin confirmed. She looked at Kelvin. He looked at her. Between them, across the expanse of the Incheon compound with the yellow sea behind him and the rest of her life in front of her, something shifted into alignment. "I want to walk into that press conference," she said. "I know," he said. "I need to be certain that when I walk in, there is no possibility of—" "There will be no possibility," he said. "Ji-hoon will handle the security. My people will be in the room." "The Hansung debt," she said. "Your 180 million. It closes with your signature," he said. "Then we have an agreement," she said. He held out his hand. She looked at it. A formality that was also, in the context of who they both were, a declaration of terms. She took it. They shook once, firmly. "One more thing," she said, not releasing his hand immediately. "Lisa." His expression did not change. "What about her?" "She is my sister," Maria said. "She is mine to deal with, not yours." "Understood," he said. She released his hand. She turned and walked toward her room to prepare. Alex King arrived in Seoul on the evening of September 11th, and he went directly from Incheon Airport to a suite at the Shilla Hotel, and he stood at the window looking out at the city lights with the particular feeling of a man who has done something irreversible and is now in the process of constructing a self that can live with it. He had cried once. In the Abuja apartment the morning of September 10th, when the confirmation came through that the aircraft had gone down and there were no survivors, he had cried for approximately 4 minutes. Then he had showered, dressed, and begun making calls. He was not, he told himself, a monster. He was a man who had been cornered. He was a man who had made decisions that could not be undone and had therefore made further decisions in the service of survival. She would have dismantled him eventually if she had discovered the money. She would have been methodical and thorough and merciless about it, because that was how she was about everything. And he would have lost not only the money but the company and his standing and the version of himself that he had spent 20 years constructing. He could not allow that. He had not allowed it. He stood at the window and looked at Seoul, at the Han River lit like a spine through the city, at the towers, at the scale of a deal that was now his to close, and he rehearsed the version of himself he would need to be tomorrow. The grieving widower who, out of love for his wife's legacy, had come to honor her life's work. His phone rang. "Lisa," he answered. "You okay?" "I don't know," she said. Her voice was different from usual, smaller. "I keep thinking about, don't," he said. "I told you, don't." A silence. "It's done," he said. "We move forward. The press conference is at 2. I need you focused." "Alex," she said. "What if?" "There is no what if," he said. "There is only what is. Are you coming to Seoul?" A long pause. "Yes," she said. He hung up. He looked at the city. He went to bed early and slept 7 hours. The way guilty men sometimes sleep deeply when the waiting is over and the only thing left is execution. The Hansung Infrastructure Press Conference was held in the Grand Ballroom of the Lotte Hotel in central Seoul. It was attended by 140 journalists, 12 Hansung board members, representatives from the Korean Ministry of Trade, and, at a table near the back of the room, 4 men in dark suits who worked for Kelvin G sang and had been positioned there since 11 a.m. Park Ji-hoon was at the door. Alex King took the stage at 2:04 p.m. He was immaculate. Navy suit, white shirt, no tie. He had the kind of face that worked in press conferences. Open, authoritative, tinged with just the right degree of gravity. He stood at the podium and the room quieted. He began to speak. He spoke about Maria. He spoke about her vision, her tirelessness, her belief in what OEG could become on the global stage. He spoke about loss. His voice dropped appropriately, and he spoke about legacy and about the responsibility he felt, as her partner of 12 years, to carry this deal across the line in her honor. He was, as he had rehearsed, completely convincing. Lisa was in the third row. She was watching him the way one watches something that cannot be stopped. He was 6 minutes into his remarks when the doors at the rear of the ballroom opened. He did not notice at first. The room noticed before he did. A shift in attention, a turning of heads, a spreading quiet that moved from the back of the room forward like a tide. Alex noticed the change in the room and frowned, mid-sentence, and looked up. She walked in. Maria Ann wore ivory. Not white. Ivory, which is a different thing, which is warmer and older and more deliberate. A floor-length column dress, shoulders bare, hair pinned at the nape of her neck, the cut above her eyebrow visible and unmasked, and wearing a small neat bandage that she had decided with precision not to cover. She carried nothing. She needed nothing. She walked down the center aisle. The room went completely silent. Alex King stood at the podium and watched his dead wife walk toward him, and his face did the thing that faces do when they encounter the impossible. It tried 3 expressions simultaneously and achieved none of them. She walked all the way to the front of the room. She stopped at the foot of the stage and looked at him. She did not say his name. She did not need to. She looked at him with the face she used in boardrooms, the face that meant she had already decided. And then she turned to face the room, and she said, into the microphone, that a Hansung representative had instinctively redirected toward her, "Good afternoon. My name is Maria Ann. I am the CEO of Okonkwo Energy Group. I apologize for the disruption. I understand there were reports of my death. As you can see, those reports were somewhat premature." A pause. A murmur moving through the room. She looked at the Hansung board, seated at their table to the left of the stage. "The deal is still on the table," she said. "On my terms, as negotiated." She looked finally at Alex. He had not moved. He was standing at the podium with the stillness of a man in whom every system is shutting down in sequence. "You can come down now," she said. They cleared the press. The Hansung board requested an adjournment and were given one. Park Ji-hoon and 2 of Kelvin's men ensured that Alex King did not exit the building. There was a private room, a conference anteroom adjacent to the ballroom, and Maria walked into it and Alex was brought in behind her and the door closed, and they were alone. This is the moment that people ask about most when this story is told. What did she say to him? What did he say? Did she cry? Did he beg? I will tell you what happened because I know, and I will tell you without embellishment because it does not need it. She sat down. He did not sit. He stood near the door, and he looked at her, and his face was doing something that might, in another context, have looked like grief. "Maria," he said. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She laid 3 documents on the table between them, the transfer records, the communication chain, the spousal succession filing. He looked at the documents. He did not touch them. "I am going to speak," she said, "and you are going to listen, and then you are going to answer one question. That is how this will go." He said nothing. "You have been moving money from the company for 3 years," she said. $241 million. You used my sister to help you cover it. when you calculated that the Seoul deal would make a financial investigation inevitable, you had me killed. You filed the succession clause the day before the crash. A pause. I would like to know, and this is the question, I would like to know, was there a moment at any point when you reconsidered? He was looking at the table. Alex, she said, look at me. He looked at her. Was there a moment? He said nothing for a long time. Then very quietly, yes. When? The morning you left, he said. You called me from the tarmac. You said, he stopped. You said, wish me luck. She held his gaze. She did not speak. I almost called it off, he said. I had a number. I could have called it off. But you didn't, she said. No, he said. She looked at him. She held this look for several seconds. Then she looked back at the documents. The money, she said. You will return the full amount with interest calculated at 12%. The succession filing will be withdrawn. You will resign from all OEG structures. In exchange, I will not pursue criminal charges in Nigeria. He looked up. And here? That, she said, is not my department. And there it was, the one sentence that told him everything. She was not alone. She had not survived the Yellow Sea and walked into this press conference alone. He did not know who had helped her, and he was not going to find out. And the silence on the other side of that sentence was the sound of a door she had no interest in opening. He nodded. He could not at this point do anything other than nod. She gathered the documents. She stood. One last thing, she said. She looked at him. In 20 years I will have forgotten most of this. I have a remarkable ability to narrow my field of attention to what is productive. But I will remember the morning of September 9th. I will remember calling you from the tarmac and you wishing me good luck with that voice, that specific voice, while having already decided. She paused. I will remember that. She left the room. She found Lisa in the ballroom corridor, standing against the wall, and Lisa saw her coming and did not run and did not speak and simply stood there, and her face was the face of a person who has been waiting for an ending. Maria stood in front of her. They looked at each other. I can explain, Lisa said. No, Maria said, not unkindly. The word was clean. You cannot. Lisa looked at the floor. Maria, I raised you, Maria said. I chose to raise you when I did not have to. When I was 24 years old and terrified and building something out of nothing and grieving two parents, I chose to put you in the center of my life and keep you there. I chose this. Her voice did not waver. And you helped a man arrange my death. I have read every message, Lisa. Every word. Lisa was crying now. The tears were real. This was not performance. I know it was real, Maria said, reading her sister's face with the expertise of 20 years. I know you are sorry. I know you loved me, in whatever way you were capable of loving me. A pause. It is not enough. Lisa looked up. Maria, please. You are my sister, Maria said. That is not something that can be undone, no matter what I feel. But you are not my family anymore. You will leave OEG. You will leave my house, my accounts, everything I have built. You will be provided a monthly amount. I have already instructed my lawyers, because you are my blood and I will not watch you starve. But you will not contact me. You will not attend events where I am present. You will not speak publicly about this family. She held Lisa's gaze. These are my terms. I will not negotiate them. Lisa stood against the wall and cried. Maria watched her for a moment. Then she said, and this was the last thing she said to her sister for many years. I prayed for you, Lisa. Every morning in my prayers I included you. I don't know who you became, but whoever she was loved. I need you to know that because it is true and because I am not able to lie even now. She turned and walked away. The Hansung OEG deal closed at 4:40 p.m. the following afternoon. She signed in the presence of the Hansung board, a Korean ministry representative, 3 OEG lawyers who had flown overnight from Lagos, and Kelvin G. Sang, present at his own insistence, and at Hansung's apparently untroubled acceptance of his presence, which told her something she filed for later reference. The deal was signed as it had been originally negotiated, $2.3 billion. Her terms. When the signing was complete and the room dissolved into the measured celebration of people who do not permit themselves to be too visibly pleased, Kelvin appeared beside her. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you," she said. "The 180 million will be processed within 30 days. "I know," he said. She looked at him. "What happens to Alex?" Kelvin was quiet for a moment. "He is on a flight back to Lagos. My people have provided certain information to the EFCC. A pause. "What happens after that is in the hands of institutions." She nodded. "You could have done more," she said. "To him, the kind of more that your organization is capable of." "Yes," he said. "Why didn't you?" He looked at her with that expression, the careful attention, the absence of performance. "Because you asked me not to touch him," he said. "And I find that when I give my word, I keep it. It is a more reliable way to operate than the alternative." She looked at him. "That is a very strange thing for a crime lord to say." "I am not a crime lord," he said mildly. "I'm a businessman with an unconventional operational structure." She almost laughed. It was the closest she had come to laughing in 4 days, and she felt it move through her like a reminder that she was still underneath everything, a person. "Kelvin Ji-sang," she said, "I am in your debt." "You are not," he said. "We had a transaction." "The transaction is settled," she said. "What remains is the debt." He looked at her. For a moment, the calculation was absent from his face, and something simpler was there. Not warmth precisely, but its precondition. "In my experience," he said, "debts between people like us are repaid in information, in access, or in courtesy." He paused. "I will accept courtesy." She held out her hand. He looked at it. Then he took it. "Then we understand each other," she said. "We understand each other," he confirmed. She turned toward the room. The Hansung CEO was approaching with a photographer. She arranged her face. She was Maria Ann, CEO, 48 hours from death, standing in Seoul with the largest deal of her career freshly signed, and her marriage ended and her sister estranged and her world reconfigured entirely. She smiled for the photograph. It was a real smile. This surprised her slightly. She decided not to overthink it. She stayed in Seoul for 5 days because there was work to do. Transition management for the new partnership structure, press to manage, a statement to release about her survival that was crafted with extreme precision, because every word was also a rebuke without naming one. On the 3rd day, she flew in her father's framed note from the Lagos office. She had asked her Lagos deputy to find it and courier it to the hotel. It arrived in bubble wrap, and she unwrapped it herself and set it on the desk in her hotel suite and looked at it. The name will mean something. I believe this." She sat with it for a long time. She thought about what the name would have meant without her, under Alex's stewardship, under a narrative that erased her. She thought about the $241 million moving quietly out of what she had built, like blood leaving a body. She thought about her sister's handwriting. She had recognized it immediately in the email chain, the looping, deliberate cursive of a woman educated at expensive schools saying, "Tell me it will be fast." She thought about 32,000 feet over the Yellow Sea, about cold black water, about bubbles moving upward in the dark. She thought, "I am here because I knew which way was up." She put the note back in her attaché case, which she had replaced. She called her Lagos office. She ran a 2-hour meeting from the hotel suite. She answered 37 emails. She ate dinner alone at the desk and found, slowly across the meal, that alone felt different than it had before. It had felt before like a failure of arrangement, something to be corrected, something to be filled. Now it felt like a condition she had earned, a room of her own that went all the way down. On the 5th day, she called Park Ji-hoon. "Is Kelvin available?" she said. "He is at the compound," Ji-hoon said. "He asked me to say if you called that you are welcome." She drove to Incheon. She sat across from him in the same room where he had told her the plane crash was not an accident, and they drank barley tea and watched the Yellow Sea through the glass wall, and they did not talk about feelings, because neither of them were people who did that. "What will you do now?" he said. "Run the company," she said. "Build the Seoul partnership. There is a Nairobi infrastructure deal I have been delaying for 18 months because I was too focused on Seoul. I will go to Nairobi next." "Always the next thing," he said. "What else would I do?" she said. She looked at him. "You?" "The same," he said. "I have a logistics dispute in Busan that has been waiting for my attention. I have a foundation gala I am obligated to attend. I have 2 board meetings." A pause. "The ordinary machinery of a life." She nodded. "You should know," he said, that the Heian runs the Yellow Sea route again tomorrow. She looked at the sea. Routinely? Every 11 days, he said. It has always run that route. It always will. She understood what he was saying. She was not sure what to do with it, which was unusual for her. Kelvin G. sang, she said. He said. I don't trust easily. I know, he said. I saw your company's due diligence files. They are exceptional. She looked at him. I'm not talking about due diligence. He looked at the sea. Neither am I, he said. The sea moved. The light was low and gray, and particular in the way it was particular at Incheon in September. A quality of light that was not beautiful exactly, but was real, honest, unspectacular. The kind of light that shows things as they are. She finished her tea. She stood. I have a 7 a.m. flight, she said. I know, he said. He stood. Ji-hoon will drive you. She nodded. She was at the door when he said her name, not Ms. Anne, her name. He said it with the Korean phonology that made it slightly different, slightly new, like hearing a familiar song arranged for an instrument it wasn't written for. She turned. The Yellow Sea, he said, is very cold in winter. She looked at him. The space between those words and their meaning was not small. She held it. I know, she said. I've been in it. She left. Let me tell you how this ends. Because endings matter and I do not believe in leaving them vague. Alex King was arrested by the EFCC on November the 3rd on charges of financial fraud, asset misappropriation, and corporate espionage. The evidence was comprehensive. His legal team spent 3 months attempting to challenge the provenance of the evidence, a challenge that did not succeed. He was released on bail and as of this telling has not yet stood trial, but the machinery is moving, and Maria's lawyers are patient. They are as patient as she is, which is very. Lisa Bell's moved to Accra. She is there now. She is not, as far as anyone knows, in contact with her sister. She receives every month a bank transfer from an account in Maria's name. The amount is enough to live on. It will come every month for as long as Maria lives. This is, Maria would say if asked, not forgiveness. It is simply how she was raised, and she does not intend to become a different kind of person merely because someone hurt her. The Hansung Oig partnership launched formally in December. It is performing above projection. Maria Ann is called a visionary in 6 separate publications. She does not read the publications. She finds them, she says, distracting. The Nairobi deal closed in January. She went to Nairobi and she closed it, and she called her father's name in the quiet of the Nairobi Serena at midnight and said, "See, the name means something." She is 38 years old, and she is the CEO of a company that is now operating on 3 continents, and she is, for the first time in 12 years, entirely herself. This is what they do not write about in the business profiles. They write about the deal. They write about the survival. They do not write about what it is to wake up in the morning and find that the silence in the bed is not an absence but a condition. Your own condition, your own quiet, your own life in the shape it was always meant to be before someone else's story crowded it. She prays still. Every morning on her knees. She has added one thing to her prayer which she did not have before. She asks specifically for the wisdom to know the difference between people who want what she is building and people who want what she is. She asks this because she does not intend to make the same mistake again. She does not intend either to close herself entirely, because she is a woman who believes that the second option is its own kind of death. Smaller, quieter, happening by choice, and she has already died twice and is not interested in a third. The Heian runs the Yellow Sea route every 11 days. In March, it happened to pass through certain coordinates at a time that Maria happened to be in Seoul for a Hansung quarterly review. In Seoul, there is a restaurant in Yongsan that closes at midnight and does not take reservations, run by a man who used to work for a Michelin-starred kitchen and left because he disliked pretension. The food is extraordinary. She happened to mention this restaurant to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon happened to mention it to Kelvin G. Sang. Kelvin G. Sang happened to be in Seoul. They ate at the restaurant in Yongsan at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday at a corner table, and they ordered too much food and argued about the Korean energy infrastructure market with a precision that the other diners might have found disconcerting if they had been listening, and the restaurant closed around them without their noticing. I will not tell you what was said after midnight, when the last staff member had gone and the cook was finishing in the kitchen and they were the only people left in the dim quiet of the restaurant. I will not tell you because that is theirs and because, more importantly, it is not settled. It is still becoming. It is in the category of things that require patience and bad timing and the kind of trust that cannot be due diligenced. The kind that is built the way empires are built, the way oil fields are drilled, the way a woman gets to the surface in dark water. Slowly, by instinct, following what she knows to be true. She died twice. The first time she was pulled from the water by a man who had his own reasons. The second time, the slow death, the death in the spreadsheets, in the silence, in the morning she called from the tarmac. That death she walked back from herself. No one pulled her from that water. She followed her own bubbles. What she found on the surface was not the world she had built. That world had been tampered with, hollowed out from underneath. What she found was something older and more durable, herself. The woman her father believed in when she was 24 and terrified. The woman who knew the difference between the sounds a plane makes when it is working and the sounds it makes when it is deciding. She is still deciding, she is always deciding. And the people who bet against her, who looked at a woman who built an empire from a single oil field and a frame note and decided she was manageable, takeable, extinguishable, those people learned the cost of that particular mistake. The name means something. It always did. Like and subscribe to Makjang Melanin TV for more betrayal stories. Thank you.
3 years of silence, 18 months of lies. Coming back from the dead.